Alright, so here is our website. Um, so first and foremost, I'm going to be going over the functionality. And so what I mean when I say functionality is what a person's going to see when they first land on this site. One of our things that we really wanted to focus on with this site was keeping it simple, keeping it elegant, as well as confusion-free as possible. And that resulted in us ultimately striving towards a one single column design as well as a single page design. What that means is no one will ever have to leave this site to get any information, as well as it scales well for mobile devices and in general does feel less clustered. So we come to the landing portion here, and what we have is, as you'd expect with any website, a few of these navigation bits as well as the logo, and then a nice team picture. We do have a get a quote button, which will bring us all the way down to the request a quote, but we'll get there later. But the reason that's important is because with any business, as you would expect, the business portion of it is going to be almost the most important. So we scroll down and you can see the logo that we've designed for them. We went with something a little more industrial to showcase, they are a machine shop, and this is first and foremost what they do. We've got a quick phone number right there, so if you're trying to get in contact with them, you don't have to go digging through the site. It's just a quick scroll down, and you have that phone number right there. A quick little blurb about the site themselves, just to let you know what they work on and what their specialties are. Then we have our services, and this is where we wanted to highlight what they do and what makes them special and different. So them being a custom fabrication and altogether custom shop, we really wanted to be able to showcase some of these larger pictures, as well as with the blurbs below them, just essentially stating what specialties they have, what they can work on, some of the things they've worked on in the past, as well as just demonstrating their experience. This is the only portion of the site where you even remotely leave the front page or the single page, but we wanted to be able to throw these images up there nice and large, just to showcase what they have done. Next, we navigate to the history portion. I'm a big fan of this myself, just because it does showcase how they've grown and how they are as a business. As you can see, it shows things like when they were founded, when they formed partnerships and agreements, when they acquired certain facilities. So all in all, just a nice way to be able to follow the company and see how they've grown throughout the past. I'm personally always a really big fan of having faces to the company, and so I think that this meet the owners portion was really nice, just because if you are someone looking to do business with S&F, you can actually see who you're going to be doing business with, rather than just an email or a name or anything like that. So that way it gives it a little bit more of a personal touch, and that's what we were really aiming for. This is my personal favorite portion aesthetically of the site, with the big wrenches and the nice background there, with just a simple request a quote form. Because again, they do so many custom things, it's not something that they're going to be having a catalog for, things like that, because when customers do come to them, it's pretty much going to be built from the ground up, and so they work very, very closely with their clients to ensure that they can deliver the exact product that they're looking for. Lastly, here is the Find Our Shop. This was created because their Google account information was actually out of date, and upon our first meeting, I was late due to following the Google GPS. It brought me somewhere over in this region here, because that's what their shop had previously been, and they since moved. We figured while we were updating the information on Google, we might as well go in, throw a little map on there, just as kind of a little nod to the site as well. And so that is the functionality portion of the website.
Okay, so we decided early on that we were going to use a framework like Bootstrap to work on this, to do the site, just because it would streamline the whole creation process. And we stuck with Bootstrap because it's a really robust framework that has a ton of features. It's really simple, it's elegant, and it's got a low barrier to entry. We knew we didn't have a whole ton of time to learn like a brand new framework, so um, we chose the Bootstrap, and then we found a theme that had kind of a similar look to what our original prototype was. And we did an original prototype on Balsamic Cloud, and then we basically modified the theme to fit our needs. Um, so basically, the way Bootstrap works is you've got a file or a folder of Bootstrap that has this is the main CSS that houses all of the components that are contained within Bootstrap. So you've got stuff for tables and different size divs, rows, columns, buttons, cards, nav bars, like you name it, checkboxes. Everything can be customized to what you want, and so things like this here, this button, this type of menu bar. These are all things that are contained within Bootstrap already, so it saves you a lot of time versus customizing something completely from scratch in CSS and HTML. So that's where we've got Bootstrap, and there's a little bit of JavaScript that I don't believe we ended up using any of. And we also have a theme here. This is where the main styling of our page comes from. And I can talk a little bit about that later. Other than that, basically, we ended up working with a mix of those two CSS files. So it was at times tricky. We didn't, ever run into any too big of a problem, but sometimes figuring out what class is dedicated to a certain look or a certain item can be kind of tricky because of the way Bootstrap works. You're kind of mixing and matching a lot of like IDs and classes and stuff like that. So I would say that was really the only problem that we ran into. One of the things that we had to do right away is change this navigation because the theme that we used was completely different than what we were going for. So we've got an About Me section, and you can see that there's this really nice easing effect that our site does. The header bar pops out, and then it takes the user to the exact location on the page. Services is a really interesting one. We've got these things called modal pop-ups. So behind each of these images, these are all the different services that the company we did the site for offers: machining, fabrication, welding, grinding, and polishing. What's nice about this is it gives people a quick glance at what the company does. But however, if they want more information, they can click on one of these buttons and it'll give them a longer detailed paragraph. And then you can see you can close it up here, and I believe there's an X up here too. So those are called modals. The way that works is if we go into our CSS, actually no, we want to go into our HTML. So we've got this grid here is called the portfolio grid. And this is where we have all of these smaller images laid out. And as you can see, there is a where is it? Okay, so there should be here we go, right here. There's an href to what's called Portfolio Modal 3 in this case. So, and then you have data toggle modal. So up here where the actual HTML images are laid out has just this, what you can see on the page right here. At the bottom of our HTML, we have these sections for each of the modals because those are going to be populated later on with JavaScript. Um, and basically, that's where you'll see all of the stuff that's added in to this pop-up modal. So that's how that works. Really great feature. I was really excited to learn how to work with that. I will definitely use that. That's something I'll definitely use in the future. Next, we've got a PHP contact form. This was one of the main features that our client requested. They do all of their business is custom, so they don't have a catalog of goods that they So in this request to quote, this was one of the main features our client requested. They don't have a specific set of items that they make or products. It's all custom to order based on a blueprint. And what that means is every project that they take on is they're very involved with their clients on a one-to-one basis. So Scott, the owner, wanted a way for the website to give people a way to get in contact with them. So what we have here is a really simple form. It takes a couple fields. It takes a name, email, phone number, and then a message. And all that this does, it's really simple, is using PHP, which I can get into here. It will take all that stuff and send an email to Scott, the owner. Contact me, PHP. Let's take a look at this. Very, very simple. It's checking for empty fields here. It's doing a validate email to make sure that that's actually an email link. Gives an error message if they haven't put in the items. And then here we're doing a little bit of cleaning. We're stripping the tags. We're doing HTML special chars to make sure that no one's doing anything funny with escape characters or anything like that. And then it's posting the name. And here's the to link. This is the email address of our client. And this email subject is going to say, here's a quote that's requested via the website, and here's the name. Then the body of the email is going to say, you've received a new message from your website contact form. Here are the details. And then it's going to populate the whole name, email address, phone number, message. And that's it. It's really simple, but it's super effective. One of the things, too, is that we wanted it to be really clear when someone was giving them a message from the website versus someone was just emailing them, personally. So the client is really happy with this feature. We're hoping that he'll even see maybe a little bit of a drive in some sales or some business requests. But that has yet to obviously been seen. Find our shop. We had kind of a funny situation when we were first meeting our client. Our team leader was using Google to find their address, and they had moved shops recently, a few years ago. And he was like 30 minutes late because he was looking at Google and he was getting the wrong address. So I went ahead and made an edit on Google, which has been reflected. And then this is actually, this is super simple. Pretty much anyone can figure out how to do this stuff. You literally go on Google Maps, you find the address, and you plug in this embed link that they give you. I had to putz around with the styling to get it to do what we wanted. But other than that, I mean, that's just a fantastic value add for the client for little to no work from us. And let's see, the next thing I'll talk about is responsiveness. So today's, the era where everyone uses their cell phone like a computer. So one of the things that we struggled with was, how are we going to make sure that this site looks really good on all formats? Now, are we going to have to design multiple sites? How can we figure this out? And fortunately, because we chose Bootstrap, it was really easy because it is such a clean and elegant layout. So we just did some simple media queries. So I'll show you what it looks like, obviously. So this was the full screen version. with the header bar, and then it pops down the main bar. It's got a little bit of horizontal design aspects to it at this point still. And then next we'll see here. When is the next query? So you'll see notice how those kind of pop over at the top there. And then these kind of condense down. These two items get closer together, and then the margins on the map area get smaller. The next query is now we've got just this visible, and the menu pops down like that. It doesn't show them at all times. And then I believe at this point, yeah, we're still shrinking some margins a little bit here. But the final query is where it really gets nice and closed in. So now we've got a couple of different things going on. We've got this menu from our earlier query, but we're also making all of the elements vertical because we need it to fit on one page. This timeline, you'll notice it used to be alternating sides of the timeline. Now it's just one side. Here the owners go vertical. The quote changes from a side-by-side to strictly vertical. And then we shrink down the Find Our Shop. Yeah, so as far as technology goes, I think that's about it. We've got really nice organization here in our file system. We've got it done by the type of code it is. We've got this by vendor. We have some icons and stuff in here, so that's what Font Awesome is. This is the jQuery easing script, which slowly does the animation when you click on one of those links at the top. And that just basically does a nice smooth transition from one location to the other. And yeah, that's about it for technology.
Number 3, testing. So when it came to testing our site, the nice thing about having such an elegant and robust site was that there wasn't a whole lot of input from the user that was required, thus meaning that there were a lot less fields on the page that we needed to lock down now, with there being one input validation form needed. With this request a quote, we did a pretty good job of implementing, like I said, that input validation, so that way we tried putting some JavaScript in, we tried a few other methods, and ultimately were unsuccessful, meaning that it was a success. So now some of the other things that when it came to the site for testing were not necessarily all that technical. Now this is our final revision of the site, but when we went and met with our client, this is what they saw and what they gave input on. And so the biggest portion was this services part here. As you may have noticed, it is not in the final revision. And then coming down, and this portion right here was going to be bios of the machining team, of the fabrication team, and things of that nature. Now, once we met with the clients, they felt it was a little redundant to have machining here and then the machining team here as well. Now, we were very happy with how this portion looked, but at the end of the day, they were absolutely right, and it felt a little redundant. And so through meeting with them and through talking with them, we found that they don't actually have welding teams, they don't have fabrication teams or things of that nature. Pretty much everyone in the shop does every job, and so that meant that we just completely omitted it, and we felt it was a little more adequate to have just each portion of what they do work on and how they excel at it, rather than trying to segregate those different services that they do offer. So in terms of testing and design, again, not too much in terms of the technical aspect was needed, just because it's a very simple and elegant and robust site, but more so was needed with the redesign. Now, one of the things that was moved around as well is, as you can see right here, the about is basically connected to the timeline now. we all agreed that it'd be a little more suited for, you know, you see the team here, and then immediately you see what the team is about and what the organization does. So those were just some of the small things that we saw along the way, and how testing and talking with our client yielded in a final product. Number 4, documentation. So when it came to documenting, I know that we were given the Jira software, but to be perfectly honest, I felt the software was extremely difficult to use and spent more time trying to document things than actually successfully doing so. The number one thing that we personally used was Microsoft Teams. Now, Microsoft Teams is really nice because it does a number of things, and a number of things to essentially complete our task. So as you can see, a lot of files, pictures, and emails from clients, logos. Basically, this is a extremely good way to see how the progress of the site has come about. Now, on top of that, we put majority of our files in here. We put all of our pictures. We put documentation. So, like, for example, this is a document I made myself to basically say how we got from our previous revision of the site to the current one. Another helpful document being a rough timeline as to when we started sprints, what days certain commits were made to the respiratory, and things of that nature. Now, one thing I used a lot myself is OneNote. These were pretty much integral to me during the meetings that we had. This is where I would go through and either break down some of their processes and things of that nature. Sometimes it would break down into giving people plans for a certain day. And at the end of the day, what we really strived for was every week or every 2 weeks for every person or small teams to have a goal done. So for example, our development guys, they may have a goal to finish rearranging the site by next week Wednesday or something of that nature. And that's really what we focused on. And by piecing all of this information together, it was not difficult at all to essentially go through and create a small timeline as well as document everything that we've done. One thing that we used as well to keep in constant communication was we did have a Facebook group chat, and that was more geared towards quick little updates, things such as, you know, when should I have this day? When do we want to meet next? How are you doing on this project? And never really did anything too serious in the Facebook group chat other than, you know, like I said, just quick communication. The majority was through Teams, and for myself with note taking, there was the Microsoft OneNote.
As far as training goes, this is a static website. There's no content management system because they don't have specific products that they consistently make. All of their work is done custom and quote based. Additionally, the clients aren't very tech savvy and didn't anticipate needing at any point to update this on their own. So what we're going to do right now is do a short training video, which we can cut out and pass on to any future developers that may take work from our client in order to update the site in the future. This is an informational video about S&F Machining's website. What we used for their website was Bootstrap. It's a very simple Bootstrap theme. And there's 2 places where all of the CSS styling is done. You can see under Vendor, Bootstrap, CSS. You've got the main Bootstrap file, which is not unique to ours in any way. This is the same file that would be in any Bootstrap framework installation. And then also under the CSS, you've got a file called agency.css. And this is where our specific theming of the website is done. There are a number of locations that I would say are kind of unique, so I'm going to go over those individually. Firstly, we've got this modal area. So if you go to the index.html, we've got an area called the portfolio grid, and you can see that that's commented. And that is where we have all of the different services laid out in a grid. However, if you look under each one of these, there is a reference to portfolio, modal, and then a number, depending on which one you're looking at. Those are going to be way down at the bottom of the index.html file. And you will see those also commented out. Each one is a modal with a number. And that's where you get this pop-up information from. So it's not up next to where the grid information is. It's down at the bottom of the file. And it's all commented under the modals. The next area that they might need updating is this timeline section, depending on what they want to add. This is just a really simple div setup with line items. I don't know how much more simple that could be, but we've got the owners here, request a quote. If at any time they want to change this area, the request a quote is done with the contact form here. But also if you go into mail folder, contactme.php. This is the PHP script for actually sending the contact email to Scott. So here you can see where the variables are taken in, validated if they're empty or not. Special chars are, and then we're stripping tags to make sure that there's no like cross-site scripting. And here's the variable to. This is who the email gets sent to. So right now it's scott@sfmachining.com. If at any point they wanted to change that, that's where you could do it. As far as sustainability goes, because this is a static website, we don't expect there to be a whole lot of issues. This is going to be handed off. Basically, it's going to get uploaded. The people that do their web hosting and their email, we've been in contact with them. So any sort of downtime or problems like that will be handled by their hosting company. As far as updates go, again, hosting company, if the servers needed updates to, I don't know if it's a lamp stack or whatever, if Linux needed to be updated, backups would be done and the site would be reapplied. We don't use any WordPress plugins. That's kind of one of the reasons why we didn't want to use WordPress, is that you do have to kind of stay on top of updating them because so much is going on there that there are security issues. We don't have a lot of those types of things going on. We have very minimal scripting except for our PHP form. The PHP form, we've got what is this? This is about 1,000 lines of JavaScript here that do all of the input validation. It's a plugin for automatic validation on any forms that are done through this Bootstrap. So pretty confident that this is going to be secure. And again, even if it wasn't, there's no e-marketplace or any sort of payment information being taken. There's really no security vulnerabilities here because all we're doing is sending an email to Scott with PHP. So as far as security goes, that's kind of about all we can really talk about. Not using WordPress, I think, was a really good choice. And then sustainability-wise, content management is also not a problem because it's a static website. We have sufficiently commented and made a training video for any future web developers that are taking over the mantle. But basically, when we met with our client, this was supposed to be get them up and running type of website because they have no web presence. It was a free website for them, and I think it's going to serve their purpose well because they are a pretty much blue collar quote based company that doesn't need a ton of online presence to begin with. So that's about it.